Interesting mock draft dropped Sunday morning in the Los Angeles Times. The paper's redoubtable NFL beat man, Sam Farmer, had his annual sportswriter mock draft. He's done it for 10 years, in which he asks longtime NFL writers he trusts in the franchise cities to make the pick of the team they cover. Kent Summers, now a sports columnist for the Arizona Republic but a longtime Cards beat guy before that, knows the franchise very well. This was Summers' pick, and his explanation to Farmer: Arizona, DT Quinnen Williams, Alabama. The Cardinals like Josh Rosen, and I don't see them taking a quarterback in the first round 2 years in a row. They need help on the defensive line, and Williams would immediately provide that. GM Steve Keim has made some mistakes in the first round by taking guys who weren't that passionate about football: Jonathan Cooper, Robert Nakembish. So I can see them taking Williams. Interesting, and though I'm going to disagree with Summers in my projection, swept along with the Kyler Murray title wave, I do think there's a good rationale for trading down or taking another player. Rosen can be 25% better in 2019 with Cliff Kingsbury coaching him than he was last year as a green rookie who was handed a new coordinator in mid-season. The Cardinals have done a good job in shutting up since it was reported at the Combine 7 weeks ago that Kingsbury let it slip that drafting Murray was a done deal. I'm sticking with my gut feeling. Two other bits of light drama: I have 4 quarterbacks going, but lower than you think, at 1, 15, 23 and 31. And there is real competition to trade up for the only running back I hear will go in round 1, Josh Jacobs of Alabama. Read on, and enjoy the draft, which will air on ABC, ESPN, and NFL Network. It's probably better to say what channels the draft is not on. 1 Arizona, Kyler Murray, QB, Oklahoma. We live in a society, I sound like Costanza, that screams fake news when something seems just too obvious. We need to face reality, folks. When Cards GM Steve Keim walks into a meeting with club president Michael Bidwill today in Tempe to discuss the fate of the first overall pick, they could do a couple of things. They could decide to take Murray, the choice of head coach Cliff Kingsbury. They could decide to take the best edge rusher, Nick Bosa, who I hear is the choice of many in the building, or the best player, Quinnen Williams, in the draft. I'll be surprised, as will America, if the choice is anyone but Murray, particularly because the Raiders, at 4, are not likely to want to trade up for what it would cost. I do want to give you one cautionary tale on Kyler Murray, assuming he is picked here. Over the last 7 years of football, 3 years of varsity high school football, a short 1-year stint at Texans A. He is 57-3. Who knows if he starts right away in the NFL? But in the NFL, he could lose more starts in a month than he lost in the previous 7 years. It'll be interesting to see how Murray adjusts to adversity. Not sure he's ever had much of it, at least in football. 2. San Francisco, Nick Bosa, edge rusher, Ohio State. Niners have loved him since the Cotton Bowl in 2017, when Bosa's 1.5 sacks led the marauding Ohio State defense in a 24-7 pummeling of USC's Sam Darnold in the last game of the star QB's college career. I hear the Cardinals think of Bosa as a generational player, which just speaks to their love of Murray if they're willing to pass on Bosa and leave him to the Niners. Edge rusher is the element San Francisco hasn't gotten right. To fortify the defensive front, the 49ers chose Eric Armstead 17th in 2015, DeForest Buckner 7th in 2016, and Solomon Thomas 3rd in 2017, and still their biggest team need is pressuring the quarterback. 4 picks in the top 20 in the span of 5 drafts along the defensive line. If Bosa doesn't put the defensive front over the top, this is some bad drafting. 3. New York Jets, Ed Oliver, DT, Houston. Imagine Josh McDaniels, Chad O'Shea and Brian Daboll, the offensive brains of the AFC East, designing protections to keep Leonard Williams and Oliver from wrecking games over the next 3 or 4 years. I realized that with new coordinator Greg Williams staying with a 3-4 defense that this isn't the perfect fit for Oliver, but Williams once bragged about being able to play 42 different defenses with his scheme, and he'd figure out how to make Oliver work. For a long time, I'd penciled in Josh Allen here because of the Jets' edge rusher need, but when you do a mock, you go by your gut. And someone I trust told me the Jets don't love Allen. So those are the kinds of scale tippers that change the board, and, most often, make me look like a dope Thursday night about 8:45 Eastern Time. We shall see. Oh, and the Jets would like to trade down too, if they can get a ransom. I don't see it. Quinn and Williams. Getty Images. 4. Quinn on Williams, DT, Alabama. My guess after talking to multiple teams is that Williams is at the top of more boards than any player. One of the smartest guys in our business, ESPN's Jeff Legwold, has Williams atop his top 100 list that dropped Saturday. Since the Raiders have a crying need at tackle, their top-rated DT was not in the top 50 of the 2018 Pro Football Focus DT rankings. John Gruden, who has ultimate say in Oakland, will greenlight this pick, and GM Mike Mayock gladly will take Williams here as the first pick of his NFL GM career. 5. Tampa Bay, Devin White, LB, LSU. Lots of people love White, a tackling machine who, at 237, tackles with the force of a 260-pounder. I'm taking my best guess of what GM Jason Licht would do if he was staring at White and Josh Allen here, because the Bucs need a pass rusher too. Jason Pierre-Paul is 30, and other than possibly the precocious Carl Nassib, I don't think there's an 8-sack guy on the roster. But White can step in for the departed Quan Alexander and be the sideline-to-sideline presence coordinator Todd Bowles would love. Plus, White might be the best defensive leader in this draft. 6. New York Giants, Josh Allen, edge rusher, Kentucky. A veteran personnel man who knows Dave Gettleman said the other day, Dave wants a pass rusher in the worst way. He won't reach for one, but he'll get one with his first 3 picks. Giants pick June 17, 37, and if they have their heart set on one of the young quarterbacks, Gettleman, as usual, has been a good poker player here, because even those who know him do not know which quarterback he likes. They should be able to get him at 17. Or, perhaps, if they play their cards right, to trade back up into the low first round with that 5th pick in the second round as bait. The Rams would love to dump out of the 31st pick. One other thing Gettleman would figure to love in Allen, no top prospect rusher is more experienced. He played in 51 college games. 7. Jacksonville, T.J. Hawkinson, Iowa. Daniel Jeremiah said the other day he thinks Hawkinson could be the reincarnation of Jason Witten. He's the best blocking, receiving tight end to come out in several years, and he'll need to be good so the Jags don't regret passing on a desperately needed long-term tackle like Jawan Taylor. My feeling is the Tom Coughlin, Dave Caldwell decision comes down to Hawkinson or Taylor, and they go with the best tight end to come out in years, to support their new quarterback, Nick Foles, who had a great tight end in Zach Ertz in Philadelphia. 8. Detroit, Jawan Taylor, Florida. I will be surprised if the Lions pick Taylor here. The Lions want to trade out, and this is the area for the first offensive lineman, Taylor or Jonah Williams, or, in what may be a stretch, Andre Dillard, to be picked. Could be Jacksonville, could be Buffalo, or it could be whoever picks at 8. And I'm really selling Taylor to the Lions. I just can't figure out which team will jump up here. For a while I thought it was Atlanta, but the Falcons seem inclined to use all their picks, not trade a fairly high one to move from 14 to 8. 9. Buffalo, Jonah Williams, TG. Alabama. Bills love Quinn and Williams, but I can't see the Raiders parting with him if he's there at 4. Bills could also trade up for Josh Allen, or pick T.J. Hawkinson if he falls to them. But if they stay, Jonah Williams could be an upgrade to Spencer Long at right guard, or possibly, eventually, Ty Nsika at right tackle. Lots of differing opinions in the scouting community on Williams. I would ask Bills Nation to look up quixotic in the dictionary. This is a good player, a better than Quarty Glenn player, but Williams is not Walter Jones. Having said that, it's a smart choice by Bills GM Brandon Beane, who is trying to build a playoff team one solid player at a time. 10. Denver, Devin Bush, LB, Michigan. There's not a perfect player on the board for Vic Fangio's defense, but so many teams need a rangy sideline-to-sideline linebacker. Pittsburgh would love for him to drop to 20, but I don't see it, and many think Bush would be a great complement to edge rushers Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. 4 or 5 teams between 10 and 20 would have serious interest in Bush if he falls past 10. 11. Cincinnati, Brian Burns, edge rusher, Florida State. In the last week, Burns has gotten very hot, because he runs in the low 4.5s and there aren't enough edge rushers for this voracious market. He has some weaknesses, like his size. He'll probably play around 248, but I think he'll be gone by pick 20. I think his floor is Tennessee at 19. Getty Images. 12. Green Bay, Noah Fant. Iowa scouts who went into Iowa City over the past few months told me the staff there raved about TJ Hawkinson and were nice but not Hawkinson-like about Fant. Might be unfair, because Hawkinson is so pro-ready. Over his last 2 seasons at Iowa, Fant averaged 14.7 yards per catch and had 18 receiving touchdowns. Contrast that to teammate Hawkinson's 14.8-yard average over the last 2 years, with 9 touchdowns. Very interesting. And Fant runs better, in the 4.5-second 40 range. This is probably 10 picks too high for Fant, and it wouldn't surprise me if GM Brian Gutekunst picks long-term offensive tackle Andre Dillard here instead. But in any case, I can't see Fant making it out of the first round. 13. Miami, Christian Wilkins, DT, Clemson Falcons, on deck here, cry. Wilkins slipping to 13 would be a gift for rookie Dolphins coach Brian Flores, who learned under Bill Belichick that quick 315-pound people movers in the defensive interior are to be collected and valued. Dolphins have so many needs, and if an offensive tackle they like falls here, that could be the pick too. Regarding QB, no team in the league, from what I've heard, has spent more time researching Josh Rosen in recent weeks than Miami. Suppose my mock is correct, and Washington and the Giants used the draft to take young quarterbacks, and Miami and the Chargers are the only teams with even some interest in Rosen, and GM Chris Grier tells Arizona GM Steve Keim on draft night, "We'll give you our 3rd-round pick, 78 overall, for Rosen." That's it. Tough call for Keim, but knowing Rosen would be an unhappy camper behind Kyler Murray, and figuring this is a good depth draft in the first 3 rounds, well, that's a lot to think about right there. 14. Atlanta, Dexter Lawrence, DT, Clemson. 4 players from Clemson and Bama in the first 14 picks, with more on the way. Atlanta needs size and power, and at 6'4" and 342, with a 5.05 40-yard time, Lawrence is exceedingly rare. He seems to have convinced NFL teams that he did not knowingly take a banned substance that caused a positive peg test, disqualifying him from Clemson's 2 playoff games. This is another spot to watch the best available offensive linemen fall to. 15. Washington, Dwayne Haskins, QB, Ohio State. Dan Snyder gets to pick the quarterback of the future from his backyard in Maryland. Haskins' family moved to Maryland from New Jersey at the start of his high school years, and Snyder's son and Haskins both went to high school at the Bullis School in Potomac, MD. Picking Haskins could give Snyder the local guy makes good story the franchise obviously would love. I found this piece of footage from for NFL quarterback Dan Orlovsky quite helpful and revealing about Haskins. Watch these 3 minutes with it. @DH_Simba7. I promise you it's worth it. Brain on brain. Carolina, Montez Sweat, edge rusher, Mississippi State. Don't put him in the first round, one smart guy told me Sunday afternoon. So many teams are afraid of him. Some teams are worried about a heart condition discovered in Sweat after the season. An NFL Network reported Sweat has been taken off some teams' draft boards. One GM told me Saturday, "We think it's an issue, but we've been told if we keep a close eye on it, he can play." This is the kind of thing that different teams will have different opinions on. Another GM told me he thought Sweat's upside, if healthy, is better than Nick Bosa's. With the retirement of Julius Peppers, Sweat would be a perfect addition to an edge rush needy team, if GM Marty Herney can get past the worry over Sweat's ticker. 17 Houston, Andre Dillard, T. Washington State projected trade. Houston sends 23rd and 55th picks to Giants for this choice. No team in the NFL needs a radical upgrade at tackle as much as the Texans. Per Pro Football Focus, the starting Houston tackles last year, Julian Davenport and Kendall Lamb, allowed 101 quarterback disruptions, sacks, hits, hurries, on Deshaun Watson, which is downright abominable considering Watson's one of the most mobile quarterbacks in the league. Think how many pressures he avoided just by being Deshaun Watson. Dillard's the top tackle on Houston's board, from what I hear, and teams think he's got a chance to be a good left tackle. 18. Minnesota, Garrett Bradbury, C. North Carolina State. Speaking of PFF, the lowest-rated NFL center in the league by far last year was Minnesota's Pat Elflein. The Vikings pick at 18, 50 and 81, and the perception on the scouting trail is that 2 of those 3 picks will be offensive linemen. They'd better be. Bradbury's a pugnacious guy, a Jason Kelce type, with more quickness than most centers in the league now. He could start day 1. No, let me amend that. With Elflein still in-house, Bradbury had better start day 1. 19 Tennessee, Rashawn Gary, Michigan. Here's what's funny about mock drafts. Sometimes, I hear from a smart GM who says something like, Drew Lock is way too low. Okay, I text back. Who should I give him to? Tennessee. No way, I text. You can't draft Mariota's successor yet. So I thought and made one extra call, and some said, of all the players I had left on the board, Rashawn Gary is Mike Vrabel's kind of player. Gary, see the science I use here? 20. Pittsburgh, Rock Ya-Sin, CB, Temple. Imagine the first cornerback off the board being a guy who played 1 year at Temple after transferring from the Presbyterian SC College Blue Hose, and who will have one of the great names in the history of whatever team drafts him. Word on the scouting street is that Mike Tomlin loves Ya-Sin, and with White and Bush off the board at a position of great Steeler need, linebacker, Pittsburgh opts for a physical 6'2" corner who made tremendous plays in his 1 season of fairly big-time football. 21. Oakland, Josh Jacobs, RB, Alabama projected trade. Oakland sends 24th and 106th picks to Seattle for this choice. So, the best running back in this draft will probably be picked somewhere in the 20s, and 3 teams, Philly at 25, Indy at 26 and Oakland at 24 and 27, are quite interested. The Raiders would have to move only 3 spots ahead to make it happen, and probably wouldn't have to denuded its mid-round picks to do so. I could see Seattle at 21 or Baltimore at 22 do this kind of deal, because Schneider and rookie Ravens GM Eric DeCosta love dealing. I met with Jacobs last week, by the way. Delightful fellow. Hungry to be a great NFL player, and he's a versatile back too. John Gruden could turn him into a 1,700 total yard back as a rookie. Clelin Ferrell. Getty Images, 22. Baltimore, Clelin Ferrell. Clemson. New England hopes Ferrell falls 10 more spots, but he won't. The Ravens also could trade. Rookie GM Eric DeCosta would love to accumulate more picks. But Ferrell is an ideal building block on a defensive front that needs a new star. I won't be shocked if Ferrell is gone if the Ravens take a 10-year center like Eric McCoy of Texas A. 23. New York Giants, Daniel Jones, QB, Duke projected trade. New York gets this pick and number 55 from Houston for number 17 overall. The Giants could just sit at 17 and pick Jones, or Drew Lock too. In my scenario, the Giants get their QB for 2020 and beyond after trading down with Houston, and they pick up a late second-round pick to go after a long-term safety to pair with Jabril Peppers, or maybe take a shot on the right tackle Gettleman knows he needs. As for Jones the player, there's a wide disparity in opinion in the man who went 17-19 as a college starter. Very smart, but he doesn't have the deep arm of the three other first-round candidates. In Bob McGinn's annual deep dive into the top draft prospects, the veteran scribe quotes a NFL scout saying of Jones, "He reminds me of Ryan Tannehill. There's just something missing with him." Damning, but the four first-rounders seem to all have zits this year. 24. Seattle, Jonathan Abram, Mississippi State projected trade. Seattle gets this pick at number 106 from Oakland for number 21 overall. This is GM John Schneider's 10th draft with Seattle, and he has traded his first-round pick 7 straight years. No question he wants to again this year, and so I have him moving from 21 to 24 and getting an early day 3 pick in return. At 24, he needs to pick a player who can be a tone setter right away. Abrams that kind of player. More about Frank Clark later, but the pressure will be on Schneider if he moves Clark to find another edge rusher with the production of Clark. Look for the Seahawks to pick a rusher either low in the round here or with their 3rd and 4th round loot. 25 Philadelphia, Marquise Brown, WR, Oklahoma. Some love him. Some think he's too wispy at 166, and they're worried that he enters the NFL nursing a foot injury, and he might be prone to injury in the big boy league. But he is one big threat. Instinctive and fearless too. Could be that Deshaun Jackson gives the Eagles one last season, and then Brown steps in as the deep threat Carson Wentz can grow with into middle age. 2 cautions. GM Howie Roseman struck out on the free agent he wanted, running back Tevin Coleman, and he could steal his RB1, Josh Jacobs, from the Raiders and Colts in trade. And Roseman is not fearful of drafting a guy, Sidney Jones, round 2, 2017, who has to sit most or all of his rookie year with an injury. So I'd watch Jeffrey Simmons here too. 26. Indianapolis, Greedy Williams, CB, LSU. He's 6'2" and runs a 4.37 time in the 40-yard dash. What's not to like? Tackling, perhaps. But the Colts need 2 things badly, an edge rusher and a shutdown cornerback. Williams is better at corner than the remaining edge guys are at sacking the quarterback. However, keep one thing in mind with Colts GM Chris Ballard, he's not going to change his board to fit his needs. If there's a significantly higher-rated player here, Ballard will take him. 27 Oakland, DeAndre Baker, CB, Georgia. Touchdowns allowed in coverage over his last 2 college seasons, 0. He might drive defensive coordinator Paul Guenther crazy with his practice habits, but his game production, at least in college, made up for that. If the Raiders can come out of this first round with the best defensive tackle in the draft, the best running back in the draft, and a corner who should push for playing time immediately, it's going to be a successful first draft for the rookie GM Mayock. 28. Los Angeles Chargers, Cody Ford, Oklahoma could be a strange change for Ford. He protected for the fleet Kyler Murray at Oklahoma last year, and, if this happens, he'd be protecting for the statuesque Phillip Rivers in LA. The Chargers have to start planning for the future up front. Russell Okung enters his 10th season and turns 31 this year. Ford's a good building block for GM Tom Telesco. 29. Seattle, Byron Murphy, CB, Washington projected trade. Seattle sends Frank Clark to Kansas City for this pick and the 63rd choice. The run on corners continues. Murphy's an interesting prospect. Very savvy, but he played just 20 college games, and his speed is in the barely acceptable range 4.55 for corners. The Seahawks continue the quest in this draft for Legion of Boom 2. More on Clark after the 32nd pick. DK Metcalf, Getty Images. 30. Green Bay, DK Metcalf, WR, Mississippi. This would be very anti-Packer. Last wideout taken in the first round, 17 years ago, Javon Walker. They haven't taken a receiver in the top 50 in 11 years. Jordy Nelson, 2008, 36th overall. I could see Andre Dillard here too, but Brian Gutekunst is trying to stock up for one last multi-year run with Aaron Rodgers, giving him the kind of weapons that will allow him to be Aaron Rodgers again. I might go Marquise Brown here if I were Green Bay, but I realize a 166-pound burner may not have the shelf life of a sterling sharp big-bodied player like Metcalf. 31. Denver, Drew Luck, QB, Missouri projected trade. Denver sends the 41st pick and a 2020 second-rounder to the Los Angeles Rams for this choice. Feel bad about predicting this? Sometimes in mock drafts, you want to get a player in the first round because you think he's going to be a first-round pick, and you wedge him in and make the logic fit after that. I do not think the Rams want to pick at 31, and feel they can use a trade down to get a 2 or 3 back after dealing 4th and 2nd round picks to Kansas City in 2018 for cornerback Marcus Peters. Denver likes Luck, and might be able to snag him as a 2-year learner behind Joe Flacco while retaining the ability to use the 71st pick this year on a potential starter at a need position, like Texas A. A move like this wouldn't surprise me, but I also think the way Denver GM John Elway's talking, he could punt on a young quarterback until the richer QB draft of 2020. 32. New England, Jeffrey Simmons, DT, Mississippi State. I don't think this is the likely Patriots pick, but I don't know who is, and I wanted to get this great player in the first round. The second best DT in the draft behind Quinnen Williams, till tearing his ACL earlier this year, won't be available to play until 2020, and he's also got some personal rehab to do after a past physical altercation with a woman. Simmons could have the kind of impact Jalen Smith had for the Cowboys after a serious knee injury in his last college game, and the team that picks him will have to wait only 1 year for Simmons, not the 2 seasons Dallas afforded Smith to get physically right. Smith was the 34th pick overall in 2016. We'll see if a team near the bottom of round 1 or top of round 2 takes a shot on Simmons. In the end, I struggled mightily with the Frank Clark trade from Seattle to Kansas City. I had the trade in my first draft of the mock on Friday, then took it out for 48 hours, and just put it back in Sunday night. The waffling came before I sent Clark to the Chiefs because of the Kareem Hunt and Tyreek Hill incidents. And I will not be surprised at all if the Chiefs don't do it. But I'm taking the gamble, because the Kansas City need for edge rush is so pronounced. Hunt was cut by the Chiefs last year after video surfaced of him kicking a woman in a Cleveland hotel last off-season. The league and local authorities are now investigating whether Hill may have been involved in a child abuse case with his 3-year-old son. Clark was cited in police reports in 2014 for a domestic abuse case against his then-girlfriend. It could be the Chiefs, or Colts or Jets, have done a lot of due diligence and believe such accusations are in Clark's past. But it was tough for me to predict that, and it came down to a gut feeling Sunday night. So I believe the Cardinals, should they, as I suspect, choose Kyler Murray number 1 overall, will be inclined to make the best deal they can for the quarterback they picked last year 10th overall, Josh Rosen. It's easy to say Rosen's a big boy and he's going to have to get over the biggest snub job in recent NFL history. But he heard Cliff Kingsbury take the job and say on several occasions, "Josh is our quarterback," or words to that effect. Now you draft a guy number 1 overall and ask Rosen to be a good soldier and carry the clipboard and help Kyler Murray win games for the team that misled him about being the quarterback under the new coach. Awkward. I don't know how the draft is going to fall, but if Miami or Washington or the Giants do not draft a quarterback high in the draft, what seems fair to me is offering a 3rd-rounder, 78th overall by Miami, 95th overall by the Giants, 96th overall by Washington, to Arizona for Rosen.